Ah, sorry. Yeah. Trying a new camera position, possibly. Stay there, bastard. It doesn't want to quite
Nah, sorry.
stay the same balance. Yeah. All right. I guess I can
Trying a
pause
new
that.
camera position.
All right. Well, that'll have to do. Um, Close enough. I can always move my chair. Oh, the camera keeps moving. The moving target is over here. Well, this will have to do. Close enough. Um, so yeah. So I'm not gonna post the link in the description anymore. Yeah, screw it. So if you want to get in the room, um, just uh, post a comment in the comment section, or you can PM me at this channel with your request to be sent the address next time there's a room or something like that. And but yeah, I'm not gonna just post it publicly until till some future time. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, no real point. I figure if somebody's interested in having a conversation, then they'll go to the minor amount of trouble to let me know when or if they're, like I said, interested. I can just PM them the room link before um, after I make the room, I'll send them the link. I suppose you can do some sort of friending thing here, but I don't know if I want to bother trying to figure out that kind of shit. And the link would automatically be sent to whoever is friendly, but I don't, screw, screw that. I don't really want friends. So anyway, the troll stuff is kind of interesting because I was thinking about why Google's doing this, and it has to do with the streaming software. I think they've been paid pretty well by the companies they link to for the streaming software, and so they've made their own streaming software unfunctional. So everybody has an incentive to purchase or have ads or however the other streaming company providers um, pay for their software. Um, so that's basically the deal. Google can make more money um, advertising, essentially, other people's software than maintaining their own software. So they say, what the hell? We'll force people to buy software to do a functionality they can do. So I'm just saying, all the people who don't think Google's evil, it's a Microsoft kind of move or an Apple move. So Google's just as evil as these other asshole companies in the sense that it's deliberately broken the functionality of this mechanism of live streaming because it wishes you to purchase the upgrade, the better version from providers who have paid them a fee. No doubt. Come on, there's got to be a way to get this to stay. Well, that didn't get it to stay. All right, so if I move that thing that way, it should stay in this corner, really. It's not, I'm not asking much from this camera. Really isn't that much of a request. At this stupid, I don't know, well, these little Logitech cameras, they really do make them kind of, instead of just putting a clip on the thing or some kind of rational kind of weighting device, they have this stupid, I don't know what it is, this laptop holdery thingy. It's supposed to fit over the top of your monitor, but yeah, I don't really like the position of my monitor, so that doesn't work for me. But this obviously isn't working very well either, because I have to keep adjusting my position, and the lighting is still horrible. Well, anyway, gotta change the contrast on the camera or something. So, all right. So I figure the Michael guy will post a comment when he's around in the chat, I would imagine. And when he does that, I will send him the link to the room, and we'll see if you can get in this time. Right? Yeah. So I guess I should write something in the description, but I didn't do it. Maybe next time I'll write something in the description about the rules of acquiring access to the room, and then people will be able to acquire access to the room. Yeah. So, what else is there to talk about? The Miles Mathis guy, I could do a little on him, I suppose. I guess I could Skype the Michael guy to see if he's around. Let's see. Oh dear, I have to type something. I don't know if I can do that on the Android. There. I should have put a question mark or something. Yeah, close enough. All right, so what else was there? Right, so the Miles Mathis thing is kind of interesting. You know, just all this pi equals 4 thing, because what they're all, I mean, essentially what they're doing is they're using a formula written for the circumstance of gravity and attempting to apply it to a circumstance where it's not gravity that's causing the motion. I don't know, Lucas, I'm about average, I suppose. Yeah. Hi, Lucas from Brazil. Gary from, I don't even know what to call this country anymore. Yeah, from, I don't know, a strange and ugly place on planet Earth. But Brazil is kind of strange and ugly also, right? It's a lot of bugs and shit. A lot of smells, I imagine. A lot of smells in Brazil. But yeah, got those here too. Be nice to be on the equator, though. I like the idea of just having one season, insufferably hot. Yeah, very nice. So anyway, so the Miles Mathis thing, yeah, this pi equals 4 thing. So it is it's sort of interesting, just because I have read a few Miles Mathis articles, and so it is sort of a whatever, tempest in a teapot, sort of kind of a pile of crap, because all he's doing is playing a word game, essentially. I mean, it's a misapplication of a formula, and obviously the standard pi is perfectly fine, and if you were to say the equation was broken, it's, if an equation is broken and has pi in it, you don't say pi doesn't work. You say, oh, we have to divide by r squared, or we have to change some other element of the formula. You don't sit there and say, because the formula comes up with the incorrect answer, pi is wrong. You just say, no, the formula is missing a component. And in this case, the missing component is the fact that you have to subtract the change in direction from the momentum of the thing going into the circle. So anything going into a spiral that isn't being controlled by another force that's spiraling it, it's being controlled by matter. If it's being controlled by a static object, matter, then it has to have its own momentum velocity reduced to create the change in direction. It's that kind of a simple thing. We are you from? Weeing, I don't know. Don't lie, Gary. I saw that video of some girl visiting you, and you clearly just live in the outskirts of what is a decent modern city. Yes, well, it's true. Yeah, where am I from? I'm from America. Yeah. I was born in New Jersey and I grew up in Louisiana. And then I moved back here as a more grown up child. So, anyway, I don't know what years means, but whatever. Years. I really don't like those emoticons. Very creepy. Whatever they're called. Smushies or smashies or mushies. Big lipped gumdrops or something. I don't know. Creepy. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. So anyway, the last couple of videos. So it was sort of interesting to have a chance to pick at Miles Mathis again because I haven't done that in a long time. Even though they say he's made a lot of videos about me, I think I've made 3. And I don't think I've made one on a specific subject till now. Specifically. But yeah, I was surprised he made some pretty glaring errors in what he was talking about on his page. About as soon as you start even talking about how much friction there is on a running track, that would have nothing to do with this whole formula anyway, because the presumption is in the formula that it's frictionless. So you have to add friction if you wish to account for friction. You'd have to add it to the equation. The equation isn't accounting for anything called friction. So, I mean, that's just, well, whatever. I was a little disappointed that his argument was as weak as it was. It was fairly weak. So, what else is news? Yeah. I should have made some coffee, really. Yeah. Kind of tired. Anyway. So I do have some answers to the questions that Michael was curious about. So I do kind of wish he was available, but he's not in his proper Australian place at the moment. Has a life of some kind. I don't know how he dares to have a life. I don't know. I guess it's Saturday there already, presumably. We haven't even got Friday yet. Well, I mean, we're barely into Friday. Barely started the Friday fun. Which reminds me, I have to put some garbage out. So what else do I want to rag about? The camera guy hasn't made a physics type video recently, so nothing to rag on there. I am still trying to get through his book, which is horrifically tedious. I guess I could screen share. Maybe I'll screen share and do some of his book. That's an idea. Yeah, I think that's it here. All right, where the hell am I? I have to mark where I am so I can remember. Let's see. The magnet isn't a magnet. It's an electrified dielectric object. Okay, so that's where I am. And here's one of his quotes from the author. Let no one say man has evolved sufficiently until he fully understands magnetism, both in what it is and how it works. So he thinks he's the only evolved man on Earth. Yeah, well, there's no surprise there, right? Yeah, okay. Kind of knew that was the way it worked. Even though it'll probably fuck up something, I will screen share for a little while. It does sometimes screw up the sync, unfortunately. But you will have to survive it. So we'll do a little screen sharing. So this is Ken's book. This is the Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism. Like they were somehow, missing. Even that description is kind of funny. So it's Dark Star Publications, and so he does give some credits to, I think, the people who have been giving him hardware. ferrofluid and the whole whatever guy. So lots of honorable mentions in here. Um, and then I guess his ex-wife. I don't know. I think she's mentioned here. But anyway, big advertisement for Ferrocell USA. See, so I mean, obviously he's getting his toys for free. Um, so anyway, here's a picture of like some of these Ferrocell images. And although I don't have a finger to point, I guess you might be able to see the mouse. Um, but it's like his contention that these are actually, this is what light is doing. So this isn't reflected light off of tubulars created inside the fluid, almost like a kind of fiber optics. He thinks this is actual light being bent, apparently, which is kind of silly. I don't see what these little green lasery things point out. It doesn't look very interesting. So this is from the Ferrocell place. I think the new ones aren't quite as clear as this one indicates the Ferrocell is. So it's just two sheets of glass with the fluid in between that is magnetically active, or however you want to describe it. And so what I'm arguing is happening is the fluid, as it moves between the two sheets of glass, it's actually creating a lens by, the fluid moves to the center. If you have a magnet there, the center is where all the heavy particles go. They separate the two layers of glass, and it creates essentially a lens, which is creating all these spirograph type images. And as you can see from this artwork, this isn't exactly, this is like from the website of the guy selling the Ferrocell. So it's obviously this is kind of, it's a toy, it's a kid's toy. It's not really a scientific measurement device. So this is even, they have a smiley face version. Yes, yeah. Fiddle with the magnetism just right. You can get to look like Richard Nixon, I imagine. So it's a bunch of colored LEDs that are creating these different colored effects. It's not any kind of warping of the wavelength of the light. So then his book is basically a lot of these kind of, here's a section of quotes from Tesla and then a quote from the author. So of all the types of people who ever lived, there's only 4 types of gatekeepers of the mind. One, the gatekeeper of the mind, which lets in everything. This is the most common type in the world. So, just talking about how, instead of getting to the subject, it's just a lot of talk about, what kind of person you are, whether you know how to think or not. Because if you don't accept his theory, then obviously you're an idiot. It's not very useful. So he puts X's through this idea that there's these area, that the field lines are something that are significantly revealing in terms of the function of magnetism. He would like to believe otherwise. So this is a Tesla quote he often uses. Scientists today think deeply rather than clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no basis in reality. Yes, I'd say that's a fair objection, but I mean, obviously, the idea that it's some kind of insanity is a excessive rhetoric, I think. All right, you can always recognize a relativist. So, it's kind of ironic for Ken to be using rhetoric like relativist when he's a non-materialist, which I don't even know what the fuck that means. They will either ask you for your credentials or offer their credentials without you asking or about them, which I don't even understand that quote anyway. Then you got William Russell and Niels Bohr. Let's see what quote he used here. Everything we call real is made up of things that cannot be real. Okay, well, that's Niels Bohr, who was a bit of a nut. All right, so Feynman, the more you see how strange nature behaves, the harder it is for us to make a model that explains even how the most simple phenomenon works. Theoretical physics has given up on the pursuit. You know, Feynman made a lot of statements, and some of them quite contradictory, so you can't take that too seriously either, because there was a part of him that was basically saying, yeah, it's all, you know, the math is one part of physics, but it's really not a description of the reality. And he sort of conceded that in the sense that he could make no sense of photons as anything other than a clumping device. They move from point A to point B in a straight line, and they only do something else when they hit electrons. All right. So yeah, anyway, so it's a lot of these fancy dancy pictures. Like this somehow explains magnetism, and it's really just a card trick. The ferrocell is a trick. And, you know, Tesla and his giant coils is also just another one of these kind of just trick things. Yes, he creates very high voltages, and but they're not going anywhere, and they're not of any use, practical use. They're just for show. So I don't know whether this is a reference to the flat earth or not. The indivisible ether. And they're showing this flat thing. A circle whose center is everywhere and its circumference is nowhere. Oh, great. You know, I mean, that just is so, yeah, I can just picture the thing that's somewhere and nowhere at the same time. That just totally sounds like such a great explanation. Not really. So I don't know who this is one of his old dead guys, I guess. Here's a quote. Most humans are fools and admit only C exists. More intelligent humans know B is necessitated to exist. The wise few study A using the lost Platonic art of reduction. Anthropohasia, well, whatever. The negative blah, blah, used by ancient wise men to unravel the nature of the cosmos. Oh, well, if they're using that kind of stuff, I think they must have a virus of some kind. Because that sounds like an evil pill. So then we have some blah, blah, blah. We actually have some writing here, but it's not very useful. When starting down the road some long time ago, I would have wished that magnetism was a unique force unto itself, a principle of its own. However, that was not to be. Magnetism is radiation. Now, this is kind of silly because he obviously doesn't even believe in particles, and, you know, radiation of what, when one could argue, is fundamentally, whatever, the dielectric field. Oh, that's a Faraday quote. Okay, yeah, well, Faraday was, you know, they all were, Newton was a religious kook looking, he had a whole theory on angels. So, I mean, all the greats were a bit wacky. Radiation does not attract radiation. Well, okay, that one I'll buy. Radiation doesn't affect radiation. The ever held false view of magnets attract and repel each other due to magnetism is wholly wrong. Well, I mean, it is magnetism, so, I think it's just silly not to call it magnetism. Polarization, space resultant to a field, radiation. So it's, again, you don't know what he's talking about sometimes, because he says there is no field, and then he's conceding the existence of what sounds like a polarized field of radiation. Divergence are all synonymous with what magnetism is. That's not denotatively, definitionally. However, while not let down that magnetism was not a unique principle, just another modality of the ether, as are all four forces are. Yeah, whatever. I don't even know how you could believe in the other forces when you don't believe electrons exist. How could you believe the atomic weak force exists when you don't believe electrons exist? Because electrons are being held by that force. But anyway, so now we get into the centripetal and centripetal stuff. And yeah, it just gets quite awful. So anyway, probably enough of that. Let's see if there's some more funny pictures. So again, he rejects these field lines as meaning anything, but field lines aren't really a representation of something that's in the field. It's a representation of what happens when you start collecting magnets and where the magnets will line up. So it sort of depends on the density of the particle where those lines will end up being. And then he has to go into the whole mythology of lodestone, like who cares about the history of silly fables, and then he does some cheap Einstein jokes and ridicules, and then he's got a bunch of dullard stuff, as if that whack job has anything to say on the subject. I don't think so. And then all the magical things that were going to happen. We're all going to have all this, we're going to have a bunch of high voltage flying through our houses, transmitting energy from device to device, which ain't going to happen because it'll kill you. I mean, it's like having x-rays running around in your house. No one wants that. So here's a metallic ant, for electron microscopes. That's how they work. You cover the thing with metal, and then you get to see all the little parts. And then we got some magnets here, and not very useful. We got some ferrofluid in a tube, and yeah, it's interesting, but not interesting in the sense of it doesn't prove anything. So then he's got these whirlpool things. I didn't really read. I don't remember this part. Magnetic vortex. Close inspection shows double helix vortex, just like a waterspout pictured in the middle. So these are just obviously he's synthesized that effect by spinning a magnet or putting this in the in the circumstance where it's getting spun, and so he's just spun the ferrofluid, and that's not terribly interesting. Yeah, some more ferrofluid field lines, quite obviously, that he keeps saying don't exist. I mean, that's what these points are. This is just a adhesion of the fluid, and you can see the very tip is where the field line is going. So it's, the extra fluid of these shark-looking teeth is just a consequence of the cohesion of the whatever the word is for that water droplet effect, the fact that the molecules stick together. But the real field line is at the very tip, so it's just a little tiny line running through that is actually where the stuff wants to be, in the sense that that's where the neutral is. All right, then we got some swirly stuff, and then we got whirlpools and water, which doesn't prove much of anything. And we got some of these another ferro imaging device, not the ferro cell, but a different thing. Let's see, 3 words that could overthrow physics. What is magnetism? Again, it's it's just polarized gravity. That's what it is. So I win. I answered the question correctly. All right, vortexes, and I don't know what this is. A commercial for some sort of anal butt cream, and blah 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 blah. Tesla quote, and then all this little fancy jibber jabber, as if all this has something to do with some sort of ancient geometry or something. And it doesn't have anything to do with any of this job. Yeah, nothing at all. And look at that, a whole collection of little whatever spirit blobs and such. So yeah, we don't need that. And there's like a Tesla thingy, and dielectricity, he keeps calling it. So here's some of his drawings of how magnetism works, and frankly, couldn't make heads or tails out of any of this crap at all. And this one was even more crappy. It's just no plus space polarized M blah 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 blah. Yeah, sorry, not even close. And then swirly bits and swirly bits, and somehow the swirly bits make a center poodle that goes into a centipedal and then twist into a one of these hyper spinner boiloids, and then does some of this jiggity jaggedy, and somehow it all adds up to thing A moves towards thing B, but there's absolutely no explanation for exactly how thing A moves into thing B. None whatsoever. Just a bunch of it's spinning, so obviously it's doing things, and why can't it do things in that direction? Yeah, okay, fine. That's not really an explanation. Um, so what else? So then it gets in the gyroscope crap, which is all kind of crap. I mean, he cheats in that experiment also. It's not a very he does this gyroscope on the edge of the magnet thing, and oh, look how it slows down when it's on the edge. Well, it slows down because it can be magnetized when it's on the edge of a magnet, because then it's getting energy from both poles of the magnet. But when you put it on top of the north face of the magnet, there's absolutely no south face field energy uh, getting there, so it's essentially a monopole. And the gyroscope, the brass gyroscope, cannot generate any eddy currents, and so therefore it cannot be slowed down because it can't create any magnetism. All right, so enough screen sharing for now. I don't know if that was just thought I'd throw it in there, give you a little, free preview of the most popular book on magnetism in the universe. So says Ken. All right. Have you delved into the workings on the mathematics of physics, or do you purely do rational observation? Well, again, you have to use mathematics. I mean, I've only said inverse square rule about, I don't know, 1,376 times on this channel, probably. So, I mean, obviously, math is important. Do I think every equation written in the history of physics is relevant or substantial or good? No. Like the single slit diffraction mathematics, it's been Huygens. It's a cheat. So, yeah, that's a bullshit formula. Obviously, I would say dark matter formulas are bullshit. The formula that says light can be bent by gravity, I don't think it's ever been proven. I don't think the formula has ever been substantiated by an actually valid experiment. So I don't think that's true. So, but I'm saying that obviously I think most of Newton's science was pretty rock solid. And the only thing he was missing in terms of understanding gravity was the fact that the sun is moving on its center of gravity. So he wasn't, he didn't include the tiny but meaningful effects of the Earth on the sun. The Earth and the other planets, obviously. That the precession of Mercury is really the precession of the sun. So that's what Einstein accounted for, was the fact that Mercury's precessing because the sun is precessing on its center of gravity. All right, anyway, the mathematics is second and should fit to the former. And from what I know, physics do vice versa, opposite of fitting reality. Well, I think it's more, I don't think you can just say it's vice versa. I don't think they're just doing mathematics first. I think they're doing a reconstruction of reality, and they're obsessed with facades and not substance. So they're trying to reconstruct the look of some ancient, a pyramid or something, or some ancient artifact, but they're not making it out of the real stuff, and they're not making it out of something with the real density. So it's facade. It's not. It's made out of fake, and so it doesn't represent a real thing. So like things like bent space are things that, it's like saying angels, in the sense you can't do any physical experiment to demonstrate the actual bent space. You can't put it in a jar and look at it under a microscope. Um, and it's just an explanation, but it's an explanation that essentially is a leprechaun. It's just blaming it on Sasquatch. It's not a real character. It's a fake character that can, like, say if somebody gets murdered, you know, you could say, oh, like OJ's wife's head falls off. You could say, well, Sasquatch did it. You know, you can do that, and you could make a whole theory of Sasquatch, chewing her head off. But realistically, okay, there's better theories than that. Yeah, a lot better. Yeah, well, I'm just saying that what I'm arguing is going to end up being so simple that the mathematics is going to be. I mean, obviously, doing any math on something with 50 moving parts is going to be complicated. So integrals over time are always going to be, if you're analyzing the motion of 15 objects in a gravitational field, that math is always going to be, 3 days work. You're never going to get around that. I mean, it's always going to be very difficult because you have to do so many equations to get yourself a reasonable approximation. And you can never get the exact answer. You can only get a reasonable approximation of the right answer. So, but what I'm arguing is, so the conservation principle here is so simple, the quanta, and that every bit of the moving bits in the universe are the same bits. They're just wearing different hats. It's just going to be so simple mathematically. I mean, it's all going to be equals, it's all going to be, simple F equals MA kind of formulas. You're not going to need anything more complicated than that, because everything's just basically ruled by the law of conservation, and all there are bits moving at vectors. And so once you quantify what a field is in terms of how many vectors are pointed left and how many vectors are pointed right, once you know that fact, it's just a matter of dividing it into the density to figure out its velocity. It's going to be a very simple equation. Very simple. So where is Michael guy? I mean, he kind of implied he was going to be around in the weekend, but I sort of implied that I probably wasn't going to do this every day. So that was part of my bad. Maybe he's always an hour in. Maybe it's, whatever time it is in Melbourne. I think it's Melbourne where he is. Like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. 2 o'clock in the afternoon on like Saturday. Maybe 11 o'clock in the morning Saturday. I don't know. It's kind of funny that he is way in the future. So, yeah, what else? So anyway, yeah, so this is a very interesting time in all of this, because it's, I'm gaining such a clarity. It's like, the Michael guy gave me some questions, and they're all like, yeah, I can answer these without even thinking. It's just so easy. Well, then it's still Friday where he is then. Yeah, I guess it's not until early in the morning that the day changes. So it's Friday night where he is then, you're saying. Well, it can't be Friday night because the sun's got to be coming up over there, right? Yeah, it's got to be doing something like that. The sun ain't here, so it's got to be over there, right? If it ain't here, it's got to be heading that way. Well, I guess technically it's just leaving California now. Still daylight in Hawaii. So, yeah, so he's got a ways to go. Yeah, well, I think I was, well, whatever. I can't, I'm not going to sit there and beat it to death, but yeah, I think it's more like 22 hours, not 15, but I don't know, whatever. Really is close to the opposite side of the Earth. I mean, I think Fuji is the opposite side, right, or something like that. Technically, of America, anyway. North America is like Fuji or something. Well, Melbourne's on the East Coast, right? Australia, I think. I mean, it's on the Sydney side, right? I think it is. It's funny, I don't even remember. It's in the north, right? Sydney's in the south, so Sydney's cooler and Melbourne's hotter, something like that. I really should. I haven't looked at an atlas in like 25 years. Should look around, see how much it's changed. And such. And so forth and whatnot. Yeah, sorry, I'm just a little bit. So I guess I could do some of the subjects you touched on, and I could just say my little piece on them. So let's see what my note says, and I'll try to reconstruct the question. Electricity equals electron acceleration. Moving electrons creates. Okay, so moving electrons, ones with just velocity, don't create an exciting force. So they don't create. Only accelerating electrons create force, magnetism. So you were sort of talking about the Earth. I remember in the movement of the magma. So that's theorized that the center is a hard thing, and then there's this thick layer of muck, hot mush, and then there's the crusty part floating on it. So 3:41 p.m. in Melbourne. Okay, there we go. Good answer. That's about sensible, I think. Yeah. Well, it seems late actually. So Melbourne must be on the west coast then, right? Because that's pretty late in the afternoon. But I was just thinking, California. Let's say it just got dark like an hour ago or whatever in California. The sun just set, so it's like getting sunset in Hawaii now. Melbourne's pretty far from Hawaii. And 3:41 is getting close. It's only 2-3 hours from sunset, right? Sun sets early now. So that doesn't quite make sense, but on the surface of it, maybe I'm just not understanding how close Hawaii is to Australia. But Hawaii is pretty far away from California. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. I don't know. I guess Hawaii might be closer to Japan than it is the United States, right? It's pretty far out there. I think. Maybe. Mostly. Kind of. Again, I haven't looked at maps in so long. All right, anyway, so what was I saying? Oh, okay, so yeah, so he's sort of asking about the idea of the electrical thing, the electrical component of talking about magnetism and the fact that magnets, if you heat a magnet, it'll lose its magnetism. And he sort of points out that's because of the domain issue, and that you can use heat to cause magnetism in the sense you take a heated material that's capable of establishing these domains, a ferro rich material, and you can heat the substance. That means you can loosen the domains by using heat. And then as you cool it, if you keep it in a magnetic field, the domains will be locked into the magnetic configuration, and you'll create a magnet. So that was part of the premise. And then the argument was something like the motion of the magma, and the iron in the Earth's core, but I think it's aluminum actually, but who knows? They say there's more aluminum than there is iron on Earth, but who knows? Um, um, so it requires this magnetism, but yeah, I'd say that the core might be magnetic, but the magma layer is really just made out of the fact that I was thinking about this as my interpretation. I mean, it's not something I can demonstrate with any kind of science. It's just my impression of how things happen. But in just thinking about the Earth and it being bombarded, for billions of years in its early life with objects moving at high velocity, that it acquires all kinds of motion on its surface. So it's like a boxer getting punched. There's all kinds of motion, and the motion is transferred through the mechanism of the neck and the muscles and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really get to your feet, maybe. And likewise, the impact motions probably don't ever get to the core of the Earth. They just end up creating a bunch of shearing motions in the layers of the Earth. So when an impact comes in, it's always at some kind of acute angle. It doesn't usually come in straight. And that acute angle just ends up meaning that there's a more surface momentum than there is interior momentum. And so you end up with a bunch of shear. And the shear is almost like friction, in the sense that it's like you could imagine you can create charge, static charge, very high voltages even, by just rubbing glass, with fur, and then taking the charge off. And it's the same. So mechanical movement will create charge because the mechanical movement will physically accelerate an electron. So there's two different ways you can excite an electron. I mean, technically, it's probably not a physical excitement of the electron. It's probably a magnetic excitement of the electron. But I just mean from our perspective, it looks very mechanical and physical in the sense that it's the motion that's moving the electrons versus a field energy that would move electrons. So that would be the source of any charge, and that charge would radiate a magnetic field. So you could say that the movement of the magma is what's creating the static charge, which is creating the eddy current, so to speak, that's creating the magnetic field of the Earth. So that would be my explanation. So I probably shouldn't have answered the question without him here, though. Still have to do it twice. But that's okay. So I won't answer the questions. That wasn't a very good idea. Yeah, never mind. Although he could just watch the video, of course. And that would work too. Yeah, that might be better that way. I can expedite things. But it's the more direct interaction with the questionnaire is probably better. But there's enough questions where we could probably cheat. I could do a couple of them. Yeah. Field of magnetism acceleration byproduct is density of polarized particle. I don't know what that is. Compressed, something about equilibrium. I wonder what that question was. I'd probably have to look up that question. I don't know that. My answer doesn't seem very... I can't make too much out of that. can't read it either. I have to learn how to write and spell someday. Compressed something just Sweeney. I don't know how I could write a word that I can't even read. Just seeking. Oh, okay, just seeking equilibrium. So yeah, I think this was the field lines of a magnet. Yeah, I think we touched on that the other day, so there must be something specific he's getting to with that one. I don't quite recall it, but it gets a little complicated talking about EMF. You know, the fields created by electricity and the fields created by magnetism, but the fields themselves are the same field. It's always magnetism. It's just what's creating the magnetic field, but it's the same field. And let's see how to describe that. I mean, the field lines are a tricky issue just because they're not a real representation of anything. They're kind of a representation of the fact that electrons don't like each other. They're kind of a representation of the fact that any magnets that line up on field lines, and that's what basically happens when iron filings line up on field lines, what's really happening is the iron filings are becoming little magnets. And so they're lining up like little magnets would, like a compass needle. They're just lining up exactly where the field is balanced. So there's a same amount of pressure between their north side's attraction to the south side of the other magnet and the south side's attraction to the north side of the other magnet and the repulsive forces. So both are balanced. And so the little shard is basically just lining up with a balanced point. And then when a bunch of those little magnets line up on the field line, what they end up creating is a bigger magnet on the field line. And that bigger magnet, clearly they all have to line up in the same configuration. They won't line up north-south to north-south because that would end up being attractive. So they can't get away with that. So they have to end up lining up in the same orientation as the magnet inducing the magnetism. So the induction of the magnetism in the piece of steel or iron is in the same polar circumstance exists. And so those magnets are not going to the magnets lined up in one field line are going to repel the magnets lined up in the other field line. And that's going to basically dictate the distance of the magnetic field lines. Because if they got too close to each other, they would just clump and create a big blob. And sometimes that happens. And you can certainly see the clumping at the poles where you can't see the field lines anymore because the magnets are just sticking to each other and they're just filling all the voids with the extra magnets that are just sticking because they're imbalanced enough to still be attracted. The attractive force of the pole is stronger than any of the repulsive forces that happen when you get further out. So there can be no balance. I think that's the way to say it. And touch. Yeah, I think that's probably good enough. All right. Labels, just convention. So then, yeah, so it was talking a little bit about the magnetic north versus magnetic south and North Pole versus South Pole, but those are just bad naming conventions. So, you know, if you were to rewrite history, you know, the North Pole would be called the South Pole. And then the magnetic south would be where it's supposed to be, which is in the North Pole. I mean, you know what I mean, in the North-South Pole. But anyway, yeah, so it's one of those unfortunate misnaming things, conventions, just like electrons becoming the negative particle when they probably should be the positive particle. Yeah, just an error. So obviously the compass needle, it's the south part of the compass needle that's pointing north. It's so, it's the north needle pointing to the south pole, which is the North Pole. It's the opposite magnetic pole. So it's kind of, like I said, the jargon has just gotten broken by those bad labels. So now we can't coherently say it right because the labels are so fucking broken. But the compass needle points to magnetic south, which, just ruins the whole, just doesn't sound right. Magnetic south is in the North Pole. It just doesn't sound right at all. I don't like reading anymore. The last novel I wrote, the last sci-fi novel I wrote was Dune. And I really liked the book. I really hated the. I didn't hate the movie, but it really wasn't a good. Both of the movies sucked. The remake wasn't too good either. So, in my opinion, just because the book to me was so much more. Um, it felt so much more romantic, I guess I could say. Words like love almost felt more meaningful. Um, um, Devotion and loyalty, all those kind of concepts seem so much stronger in the book, and the movie was just so dark and so you know and it's like I just think they've turned everybody into kind of an asshole in the movie, so it was just too hard to it was just too hard to see the distinction between good and evil. So sort of. So well, anyway, I'm just saying, but that often happens with books. Books I just I pick out the part I like, and so you know, I remember I read Rats or something, about some rats that took over the world or something, and yeah, the only part I liked was like the sex scene in the back seat of the car. Um, so it's all kind of like what you're after. But I guess what I'm saying is in the novel, in the story in the book, the woman just seems so much more beautiful and everything. It just seems like they weren't the characters I was looking for. The characters just didn't match the image I had in my head from reading the book, and so I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't like these people. And I liked the people in the book, but I didn't like the people in the movie. Yeah, I was just when I read Dune, I said this has to be a movie because I said this will make a great movie. I mean, riding worms and the whole story. It's just like, oh, this will be a kick-ass movie. And then when they finally made the movie, I was like, oh man, that's great. They're going to make this movie, and yeah, I was like, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have made it. So anyway, that's fine. The rest of it, yeah. I mean, I did read other sci-fi books, I suppose, but I am kind of a movie whore. Do like a good movie. I love the theme of the first Star Trek movie. I thought they could have done so much with that. Because it had almost didn't have virtual reality in it, but it had that whole AI thing. And you could have really done something with it, and they turned the AI into like a silly woman. Just, oh, I want to be a housewife and have kids. I mean, it was just, oh, crap. It was just such a disappointment. I've come all the way across space, just so I can be silly. Okay? Silly's fun, right? Yeah, it was just, oh, fuck. Yeah, right, Vigor. I just mean, I think that was it was a story you really could have done something with in terms of that whole idea of your own technology coming back to roost, so to speak, and being smarter than you. I just thought that was a great concept, and the whole idea of it even being almost maybe being a reproducing machine, like it's such a huge, it is so technically advanced that it can make copies of itself. I mean, that would have really been interesting then. And whether and it's trying to find its origin because it's trying to find a reason to do that or something like that. That would have been a really interesting dilemma. Like, should it make? Is there reason to exist? Is there purpose in existence? Is there something to do in the universe? Like even having Viger go all the way across the cosmos, go back home, just to see if there was something it actually needed to do. And then it finds out the only thing it needs to do is open the can of Raid and kill the bugs on the bug planet. That would have been just brilliant. Yeah, they should have just killed everybody. Oh, perfect. Yeah, it is amazing how time has passed. It's just so, it's like, fuck. Just, you know, all of my cultural references are artifacts in museums somewhere. But it is a tricky business, making a movie that's got a good story and then making it watchable. So, because I really hate that some movies that are just crap, like The Matrix, they're watchable movies and they're crap. It's a stupid and just preposterously plot flawed movie. But yeah, it's watchable. That's irritating. Yeah, it was before Sinead O'Connor, right? So it was kind of you know, yeah. I don't know if I really found it sexy, but I was like, oh, yeah, well, okay, it's okay. It's sort of a look, maybe on fetish night, maybe. Yeah, I don't watch TV at all, so but yeah, I just run old movies on my screens, and like the one of my over there, just old movie after old movie after old movie. I know which one's on there now. Oh, so that's Independence Day. Yeah, it's a pretty crappy movie. I mean, I have it on there, but it's like I kind of want to take it off because it's not really watchable. So that's one of those movies where you think this could be a good story, but yeah, that was a stupid movie. I mean, plot flaw all over the place. I don't even know how they could make a part two and make the same movie again with even dumber. Let's make the spaceships even more preposterously, insanely large. you know, like all of those, like the aliens actually need to go to the Earth and actually conquer it. They couldn't send something called a robot, right? They can have anti gravity that can hold up a zillion, billion, zillion, zillion ton spaceship that they could manufacture and house all of these little squirmy aliens inside of. And all of that technology, and they couldn't figure out how to make a robot. Yeah. Whoa, they couldn't make a giant drone. I mean, why the fuck would you? Like, it's not like they had ground troops, right? I mean, there's no ground troops anywhere. I mean, why would you have to send a whole bunch of soldiers to the Earth? It's just retarded, especially when the soldiers don't do anything and they can't shoot worth shit, right? They have laser fucking guns and all this shit and they can't hit anything. you know, it's just so fucking bad. Oh, I mean, I really hate movies that are that plot flawed because you're just, you can't suspend belief enough. You're just like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, sure, that happened. Yeah, sure, yeah, it happened just that way. Sure, sure, sure. But anyway, I shouldn't be talking sci-fi movies. I should be talking hard science. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Where the fuck's Michael guy? Damn bastard. I guess I should have sent him a PM earlier and said, "What time are you going to be available, shithead?" Yeah, well, I mean, just that idea alone, that somehow there would be anything that he could learn. Okay, not only their language, right? Because you'd have to learn their language to do programming, but you'd have to learn like their version of C++ in 15 minutes. Yeah, I don't think so. And it's funny that even that movie isn't that old, but it's like his PC was like from 1942. I mean, like, hello, whatever, David guy. It was written in like at least characters. You're just like, what is it? What do you mean we got 360 by 220 screen resolution? What the fuck, man? We're already diminishing our implementation of ground forces in lieu of airborne personnel. So, Eros or we now, I doubt ground warfare troops will exist in any conspicuous extent. Yes, well, I'm just saying, obviously, robots are, you don't send a man to do it if you can send a robot. And we got robots that do bomb disposal. We got robots do all kinds of stuff. And obviously, if we spent any money at all on robots, obviously we could really make kick-ass robots. I mean, they're flying drones from thousands of miles away now. I mean, really, literally. I mean, people are 1,000 miles away and they're flying the drone. Yeah, well, I didn't see that, but you know, Pacific Rim just sounds a little gross. Yeah, well, I'm not too big on that. I mean, Vulcans could get away with that mind meld stuff, but you just can't do that all over the place. That's just a little bit too silly, also. I mean, a mind meld would be really gross. And, just imagine, you mind meld some alien. And he's like, "Oh man, I'd really like to lick your nipples." You're like, "Oh man, creeping me out, fella." Such, so forth and whatnot. Yeah, really. Probably should give up soon. And we'll just try again another day. Just kind of don't want to use up all the subjects and blah, blah, blah. Just conventions. Let's see what the next one is. Wave height is just a metaphor for intensity. Okay, so that's the frequency argument. That's a pretty easy one. Yeah, the whole difference between AM and FM radio signaling and how you convert that into photons is fairly simple. AM just makes bursts of photons. Lots of photons, not too many. Lots of photons, not too many. Lots, not lots. And FM takes that principle and goes a photon, a standard amount of photon, and then we'll just wait a while. Okay, now another little standard amount. Wait a little while. Standard amount. Because the FM is higher frequency, so you can afford to give away some frequencies. You can just let them go flying by. Well, I'll let 15 of those opportunities to, shoot some tons. I'll just let those pass by, and now I'll shoot some. So it's pretty easy to explain. Yeah, so that was Ken's book. Yeah, it is a long thing. I have to admit, he does ramble on and on and on. Hyperboloiding, blah, blah, counter space, inner space, loss of inertia, blah, it just keeps going on and on. And I can't make anything at all out of it. Just nothing. I can't find a handle anywhere for my brain to say, oh, I get where he's going with this. Just not there. Like I said, 1 minute he says there's no fields, next minute he says there's 4 fields, and everything's interpreting the fields in different ways. And I haven't gotten to the spooky action at a distance, because that's when I'm damn curious how he's going to sit there and defend the idea of that nonsense. I mean, apparently he thinks there are spontaneous and instantaneous actions. There is instantaneous action at a distance. I just don't know how anybody can make any sense out of that rubbish. There should be a mind melt orgy from extremely knowledgeable persons dedicated to one host, so as to load the integrate of all the information into one combined whole. Anyway, imagination and such. Well, the question of what the nature of knowledge is kind of interesting. Because part of me says it's just the absence of bullshit. So if you just take the lies and the nonsense out, the truth is really easy. It's like, 15 paragraphs. It's really literally like the 10 Commandments or something. Or even better, the new version of that, which is do unto others, have others do unto you, which is basically saying the 10 Commandments without listing them all. So yeah, you could really reduce it to the simplest core concepts and principles as truths. And you could say, yeah, there's 10 of those or 15, and yeah, that's it. And the real catch is to getting a brain to accept them. And once it accepts them, then all its logic is going to be dictated by those concepts. And once I know my happiness isn't more important than your happiness, that my sensations aren't special, cool sensations, and yours are sucky, lame sensations. I mean, once I have knowledge like that, then everything I see, I have to impose into that frame. And so that frame dictates my knowledge. And so what I'm saying is those core concepts of perception, that you're just a psychology, that you're just a robot, that you've been manufactured by an environment, and everything you say and do and every mannerism is some fucked-hearted reflex. It's just a, as I said in the other 2 videos, right? It's a reflection. It's, yeah, that's all this is. I'm just saying those core concepts just completely, limit the contextual frame, and then everything just gets kind of, the puzzle pieces get monstrously huge. It really is quite easy to, oh, I have to make a decision. Oh, and it's just, it becomes kind of big, giant puzzle pieces. It just becomes kind of easy. Yeah, it goes right there. That's the solution. I put the piece in the big hole there that's shaped like Donald Duck. It looks similar to the writings of F.A. famous schizophrenic named Francis Deck. I guess he's not famous enough for me to know who he is. But everybody's writings look a little wacky. It's a poorly formatted book, I have to just say, just because he doesn't put enough spacing, and the quotes, he puts them in italics and this and that. There's lots of different text formatting, colored text, italicized, shrunken, I mean, it's just, it's just not very, takes away from its readability. It's not like a standard book. You just put pages and read text. It's just kind of visually irritating. It's like books that have like 17 million footnotes or something. It's just, yeah. But I mean, it's very Kenish in the sense that, it's like he quotes Einstein and then Edison and then Tesla and then whoever, and then he puts author, the author quotes he throws in, mixes them in with the the big guys. And I mean, if his quotes were great, that would be okay. But his quotes are kind of obviously lame by comparison. Not nearly as poetic. The hyperboroid is the duraloid of the marloid, and it all has this, the counter space. Again, I just can't do anything with that concept, counter space. What the fuck are you talking about, counter space? I mean, he's complaining about somebody having bent space, and he's talking about something called counter space. I mean, how can somebody, that naked be pointing fingers at the naked emperor? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Hypocrite much. So, anyway, let's see, what's the last thing on here? Tipping has to do with any energy required to cause an event. So I think it was the tipping point argument. Yeah, so he sort of wasn't understanding the, me using the idea of you hitting something in sequence, causing, on its harmonic, causing it to tip, and using the argument that that's the mechanism of why photons are effective, is that they are at the frequency that tips electrons. And obviously, I'm not saying it's a tipping like a tipping a building over. The tipping is more like creating enough acceleration to break the magnetic bond that, say, the electrons are in. The electrons don't like each other, but they're attracted to the proton. So they're attracted and they want to get closer to the proton, but to get closer to the proton, that means they have to get closer to each other, and they don't want to do that. So they're stuck in this ring where the ring can't get smaller because the electrons can't stand each other. So they're in a very tense bond. And so a photon has sufficient energy, the ton part, the two hits at a certain speed, which is like ultraviolet light will hit the electron hard enough to kick it, which means it either pushes the electron next to it out, or it itself gets popped out, maybe just temporarily, but it gets popped out. And then the ring can get smaller. So it's not the electron, that's actually losing energy. It's the electron as a composite of electrons that loses energy. And because it loses the bond of one of the electrons. And then the trick would be is how do you get the electron, how do you squeeze open a hole to shove a new electron in to re-expand the circle of electrons. So yeah, I don't know I haven't figured out all the mechanics of that, but that would be the tipping I'm talking about, is the energy required has to be sufficient to break the strength of the electron's bond to the proton, which is not at full strength because the electrons hate each other. So depending on the chemical compound and how many electrons there are, the strength of that bond gets weaker. As the atom gets bigger and bigger, the electrons are so numerous that they create a pretty distant ring of electrons. Is pretty far from the nucleus. And that's why they're radioactive, is because the electrons are constantly popping in and out and pushing back in. And I think when they get pushed back in, they obviously squeeze the electron, and the electron being squeezed, it squirts a photon. It has an accident and it poops a photon. Suck a dick and die. Oh, you don't get to have any fun tonight, huh, Chemstar? Oh, sorry to disappoint you. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not really sorry, you cunt. Yeah. So really, you die first. Oh, look, what a big word he used. How old are you? 7? Yeah. 8.5. Yes, but fuck off and die. Even if you're 8.5, get brain cancer and die. Or ball cancer, either one. You pick it. But it is very peaceful. I do have to admit, this having no access to the room really makes the room so much better. It's so much more peaceful in here. But yes, it does require me to do all the work now. Since Michael didn't show up. Fuckhead. Damn Australians, can't count on them for nothing. Yeah, good day. I was scrubbing my koala bear and I just forgot about the time. It needs to be scrubbed. And such. So anyway, yeah, we'll probably just take a pass and try again some other evening. Or something like that. Mostly, probably. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I did. I Skyped him, actually. And, yeah, he's just not there. He's not, he was having computer trouble, so it might just be computer trouble. But, he might have something. He might have to do something. But, no big deal. There's still time. I still have much work to do. I got to do my freaking Arrow program. Got to work on that. So I got plenty of shit to do. I just was sort of in the I was awake kind of mood, and I just figured felt like talking, so it would have been okay. But I'll just have to wait till some other night when I don't feel like talking and I'm in a shitty mood. That's okay. It's all the same in the end. Well, I can't say it's all the same. There's huge qualitative differences between one day and the next, unfortunately. And the whole problem with this whole living thing is no quality control. You're just subjected to the whims of fate. It's quite disgusting. Quite unsatisfactory. So, last chance for any closing statements from the whatever it is, the chat area and such, and so forth and whatnot. I don't think there's any. Let me just check and see if there's any new comments on the videos. I think the last two videos were, pretty good. I mean, I think I ripped Miles Mathis, a pretty good new asshole, and we'll see. Some asshole posted, so this is the fable you were talking about in your previous video. So I responded with, what part is incorrect, ass sucker? Why not provide an incorrect quote, ballless cunt? It's kind of like what I said to Piro the other night. If it's incomprehensible physics, then why don't you point out what you don't comprehend? And then he'll just go, well, there's no information in it. How could it be physics? It's not about information. Physics is information. Physics isn't about physical things. It's about fun information. Don't you know anything about physics? Yeah, it's about fun. It isn't about facts. All right, Lawrence. Lawrence is a good name. I don't know about Hunt. Lawrence Hunt. Yeah, I guess it's adequate. But Lawrence is kind of it's kind of a statement kind of name. I came in here with trepidation, since I know you don't suffer fools gladly. Well, this is true. I do not suffer what I do not need to suffer. Yeah, I suffer the cat because I sense obligation, and I am terrified to feel like a cruddy, lousy, stinking, rotten shithead. But yeah, I don't have any such problem with humans. Yeah, I could squish them without even. I could run them over with my car all day long, and not feel bad at all. Not even a twinge of, oh, isn't that the poor little animal? Oh, the poor thing suffered. Oh, poor Donald Trump. Yeah, no, no. Oh, I would just be like, oh, boy, that was a fat one, man. Really. Hope I didn't break my suspension. That's all. Yeah, that's the only thing I'd be worried about is getting the crud out of the tread of my tires. Yeah, Gory Masher. Yeah, maybe I'll change my name. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like the Masher part anyway. Because yeah, I sure would love to just have me a little grinder and just take all just start with the Republicans and just work my way down. Just grind them up. This is exactly, hey, guess what? I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve. Yeah, here you go. Just what you deserve. You have some more. It's just what you deserve. Does it deserve fun? Yeah, you earned it. Here's your payment. Do you feel profited? Do you feel profited? That's got to be a Kennyism, right? Ken's probably got a word like that. Profited. I make up a lot of words myself, but I mean, yeah, Ken's the king of made up bibble. So anyway, Yeah. So anyway, thank you for whatever the participation was. I won't qualify it with any kind of grading, but it wasn't too bad. And next time, I hope to be more on subject and direct and physical and all that kind of crap. More sterile and boring, perhaps. But sometimes it's necessary. That's the truth can hurt. you know, oh, you got to do all this brain exercise. Hey, look, you can see I got an Einstein book. You can see it there. That's Einstein. It's the biggest, fattest motherfucking cunt book ever written. I don't know why I mean, Einstein really is. His story is not got that much detail in it, right? Most of the time he's spent sitting around just smoking his pipe, going, "I don't get this whole photon thing. I don't get this. I don't get this. Who came up with this silly idea of bending space? Whose idiotic idea was that? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. I did that. How can you write a book that thick for a guy who, he really didn't do that much? I mean, once he hit like whatever 27, he was sort of done. And then they just kept making a lot of mistakes. Like, the whole nuclear bomb thing was that was kind of an amazing Einstein moment, right? I mean, the odds of getting a sustained nuclear reaction by shooting neutrons into atomic nuclei is like the odds of slipping on a banana in the middle of Antarctica without any feet. Huh. And then 6 months later, a guy does it, It was like, whoops, I was totally fucked-hearted. What the hell was I thinking? It's kind of obvious. Neutron is going to go right into the nucleus because it's connected to protons all day long and knows protons so well. It couldn't possibly not love protons because it spends its whole life with protons. I was an idiot not to say, hey, neutrons want to fuck protons. I should have figured that out. It was stupid for me not to think that was the way it would work. And the neutron goes in, it goes right for the proton because it's got a penis and it's going to fuck the bitch. I should have figured that out. Stupid Einstein. Fuckhead. Ugh, maybe I should eat more bananas. Anyway, that's probably enough of a video. And, maybe I'll come back again when I can think of something more to bend. I tried to bend this pen, but plastic is hard to bend. I gave up. I'll see if I can find something more bendable. Because it's good fun bending things and such. Anyway, free Einstein imitation. Where do you get that kind of shit for free? Huh? Yeah, only here. Okay. Should look at the camera, but it's not in the right place. God, I look like hell. I look as old as Einstein. Doing physics makes you old as fuck. I was really young just yesterday, and all of a sudden, I was young, wearing Hitler mustaches. Everything was good, and all of a sudden, I'm crazy, fucking crazy looking person. What the fuck happened to me? Bitches. I think the bitches did it. It sucked out all my vital fluids. And, without your fluids, the skin dries out. Everything goes wrinkly. The hair goes all crooked. Fluid problem. Bitches and protons. Fuck the goddamn things. Femitons. Asshole femitons. Anyway. Okay. Now I'm done, maybe. Let's have a wager. Who thinks I'm really done, or am I just pretending to be done? What do you think the right answer is? Is he done?
Or is he just pretending to be done?
I actually hit the stop broadcast button and stop. I guess one of you must be have control over the system, so you rigged it so I couldn't, and so you're going to win the money because you're preventing me from hitting the damn